Has Role Q really been out for 2 weeks already? Man, time flies when you're making videos nonstop. In between which time, we've been playing only on the PTR. We love it so much, we are not queuing again for a ranked mode without a role lock. But of course I'd say that. This is the system that we've been begging for what feels like years at this point. This is probably my 1000th video about 222, and I finally now get to review it in full. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons in this video, and I think you're going to be surprised that some of the criticisms people were levying against role lock are completely backwards, not even in the conversation at all, but there are new problems that you may not have thought about that I really want to get the community prepared for, because there definitely is going to be some major growing pains with the 222 system. I overall think it's the best thing to ever happen to Overwatch, and I do think it saves the game in a major way, but we have to be honest about the whole new world we're walking into. So, first, the good things. That's easy to talk about. Most of this many of you already know, so I'll just fast forward through the stuff that's pretty obvious. There's no more chaos. No more lopsided team comps on one side or the other. It's reliable Overwatch every single time. The major upside with this that I want to shout from the mountaintops is that the stress and the conflict levels go down considerably. I don't know how to quantify it, but it's something like 50% of the ranked BS stress is just gone with the snap of a finger, because you no longer have to worry, does our tank player even play tank? Is our Widow player really a tank player? None of those options even matter. You don't have to dig through everybody's profile to see what they play and try to do sort of like kindergarten management to try to get all the kids in a line. All that's just gone. Not once do I feel like I need to do that in this new system. I just play my role, and the cool thing that happens, and I really hope this happens for everybody, not just me, but since you know you can only swap inside your role, you really only need to talk to that other guy in your role. Like, what do you want to play? Or girl, obviously. And the benefit of this, it allows us all to focus on ourselves, which we should have been doing anyway. This also clues into what I was talking about with my previous video on Brigitte, where you really do have to think about swapping your hero a lot more, actually. A lot more than you might think, but I think that's a good thing. It's just inside your role. So you gotta ask yourself, am I able to stay alive as Ana, or do I need to go to Moira, or Brig, or Mercy, or Lucio, one of these other characters that either can hold their ground, survive, or get away better? Depending on what the enemy team's playing, and depending on the map, you always have to make these choices. You no longer can think, forget playing tank for this team, they're bad. I'm gonna pick Widowmaker and kill their Widow or their Pharah or whatever, and I'm gonna carry the game for my team. No, you have to think, what is the best tank swap for me to utilize in this situation if you want to win the game and have a big impact? And I think that's a good thing, because it requires us all to learn the game properly and actually learn the roles. We'll talk about this more in the downside section, but regardless, I think all of this is just good things. Stability, accuracy in the SR system, reliable fun all the time. I also think, just sort of a side note, the game's just more fun to play in 222 as well. Sure, triple DPS was pretty fun as well, and a lot of people did enjoy GOATs, but I think we can still get those aspects of gameplay out of 222 and everyone be happy most of the time, because healers have protection, tanks get healing, damage have space. The natural synergies that exist in every type of Overwatch team comp are always at least somewhat prevalent, if even just by accident, right? Even if you don't intentionally pick a good comp, you at least sort of have one, and furthermore, the enemy's limited in what they can pick, so the games are just more reliable. Now, some people think that means it lowers creativity, and I do want to talk about this more in my upcoming meta discussion about what heroes are the strongest and best in this new format, so I won't go too much into depth about the creativity angle, but the truth is, it's exactly the opposite of what so many critics said that adding the role lock would do. And keep in mind, this is a fair criticism to just assume math is hard. I know enough about math to know I'm bad at it, and know that it's very easy to come up with math that actually isn't reality. And here's an example of that. What a lot of people did is think that if you have unrestricted picks, that means there's way more combinations. So surely we would just have less team comps in 222, right? But now finally, with like a week of Overwatch League being played, as well as playing it a lot on the PTR myself, I can assure you that's not true. And now I don't just have my own hot air to rant about this, as I have for the past few years. I actually have evidence to show, no, in a competitive game, What limits your creativity and diversity of the strategies you can use is power, not the number of things you can pick. That, in fact, can be worse if it enables power, which we saw in the GOATS meta, right? A lot of people love the phrase, oh, we don't have enough heroes for hero bans or limitations or whatever. Meanwhile, in GOATS meta, it was some freakish Frankenstein monster where you could just lose a body part and put another one on for whatever you needed. Oh, need more damage? Toss a Zen in there. Need more healing? Toss a Moira. Need disable an anti-air? Oh, Ana can do that. Why play damage ever? Oh, you thought high ground was important? Well, now you can dive GOATS. Isn't that great? What the old system does is allow for the tier 1 strongest power level comps to be even stronger, which was either GOATS or triple DPS. Either way, those comps could beat any other tier 2 comp you could think of, basically. And not just beat them, but be like 10 times stronger than the next thing. That's really important. It's the gap between the power levels of different comps and picks that denied so many things to be even playable in the old system. In 222 now, we're seeing outrageous amounts of creativity, way more than even I could have thought. The principles that I've been trying to preach have had an even bigger effect than I expected. Why is that? Well, turns out, even if you want to say that bunker comp is the best, which I think it is, as we've seen in the Overwatch League, the fact is, it's not so much better than the next best thing that you can never run the next best thing. In GOATS meta, you wouldn't have dreamed of being like, whoa, we're going to play Winston Genji Tracer into this because we're really good at that comp. No, just that's flat out off the table. Whereas now in 222, really the only thing you have to consider is the map, which this is what I'm really excited for with this new format. With the power level of comps going down, it really allows both the individuals and the maps to shine again. I forgot that maps used to be important. The old format was so much easier to break that maps kind of just went on the back foot. As long as you picked the best synergies, you could kind of overwhelm whatever map advantage that you could try to build with the right ground, the right cover, the right angles, whatever. But now that's not the case anymore. We'll discuss this more throughout the week, but as long as there's high skyboxes and tall buildings to give Pharah cover, she's good. If there's a lot of vertical play and flanks, Doomfist and Genji look playable. There's spots where McCree dominates. Both Mei and Reaper are seeing a lot of playtime. And with this kind of variation, the overall comps that go with them are getting played as well. So even though we don't have balanced tanks right now, as Orisa Hog is probably the best, there's still so much other well-balanced heroes in the support and damage category to go around them that we're seeing a ton of variation in the Overwatch League, even before they put in any of the balance fixes to try to usher it in. You gotta remember that. So not only is the creativity argument against role queue dead in the water, in my opinion, it's the literal opposite of what many people thought. Moving past the creativity point, getting back into just straight up matchmaking with role queue, I did want to say that I think SR per role is incredibly fun. No matter what you want to play, you can queue for it. You might have to wait a little bit longer, but you will guaranteed be able to play that role. It's a fun way to challenge yourself. Like, everyone gets a turn. This is something we always wanted. If you want to learn a role, you don't have to make an entire new count for it. Having 3 separate SRs is awesome. You can challenge yourself and actually find where you're struggling much more reliably, because before it was always really difficult for people to see their own mistakes, because so often, so much was wrong in just the hero select screen alone that it was hard to really enter the game. Well, now with the game's reliable, it's much more stable. The things you have to learn are on a more narrow plane. Whereas in the old format, you did have to learn deathmatch scenarios when you had like no tanks, no heals. What do you do when you don't have a damage player, when you don't have a healer player, all the other permutations of the ranked chaos that it used to be? Well, that's just all gone. Now you just reliably have an even team comp, and it's much easier to find your way through and learn at your own pace. Whereas before, the game threw everything at you at once, and it was like, good luck. Some people don't like this because they think they won't be able to play as many heroes, they like flexing, but you can still fill only if you're solo queuing. If you're in a group, you do have to only pick one role, but if you solo queue and you just want to get the fastest queue time possible, don't mind what you play, you can select all 3 roles, and it will fill you in. You won't be able to flex across, but I think, to be honest, after reviewing thousands of hours of footage of your guys' games, playing the game for years, I can confidently say flexing is just a terrible idea that people shouldn't have ever done. It's actually very hard to know what you are good at in Overwatch without actually studying it properly, and a ton of people who try to play multiple roles did it badly and shouldn't have been doing it the whole time. Taking that option away, I think, is a very big upside. But more to the point, you get to play more heroes because you can queue for them. I always felt it was hard to ever try to have a damage account because doing so pretty much condemned you to not have a good team comp a lot of the time if you got queued with other damage players, which, let's face it, you did. Whereas now having a separate queue for that takes the guilt away because, hey, if you don't like your damage players, we'll queue for damage next time. You take pick up the Widowmaker scope and see how well you do. Everyone can get a turn. It feels great. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the actual downsides. The number one downside that a lot of us I don't think are going to see coming is that the game is too hard. I think it's a good thing that we reliably play Overwatch every time now in ranked, but if you were able to succeed a bit in that ranked chaos where things were a mess and sometimes you instantly win and instantly lose and that was fine for you and you succeeded in that system, well now you have to learn actual Overwatch and you might not be very good at it. This is going to be the biggest growing pain of the entire thing, regardless of these other criticisms, because up to this point, the community has been trained and incentivized to learn maybe like 3 to 5 heroes across 3 roles to like a mediocre level. Now, you need to learn an individual role and probably most of the heroes in that role if you can, or at least a big percentage of them. Because put it like this, before, we had a lot of players that would fill on tank, even though maybe they shouldn't have, but sometimes it would work because the old format was more about both teams making compromises and doing the musical chairs of roles to kind of figure out who's playing what. So the specialization and power level at all the ranks really was lower than it's going to be in 222. Reason being, if you're filling on tank, and the enemy also have a guy filling on tank, and it's not their main role at that SR, you both may be a lower rank entirely from where you're at least on that role, right? But now you only get tank if you pick it. So that means if you sort of had a serviceable tank, or at least good enough in the realm where everybody's filling all the time and nobody really knows what they're doing, well now you're going up against a tank player that, no, this is my role, I'm learning it, this is my accurate SR, so the confrontation of that is going to be pretty jarring, I think. But in a good way, in my opinion. I hope we all as a community take a step back and say, you know, I'm fine with Overwatch being harder now. It's a competitive game after all. At least I actually get to play the game and have a competitive experience every single time. It's just you might be shocked what a competitive experience feels like every single time. It's going to be hard. That's what I'm trying to say. You no longer can just blame your team for insta throwing at hero select or insta win because the enemy's doing that. Even if the team comp isn't ideal for the situation, both teams have the same tools to work with. And again, in this new format, because the power level of top level comps aren't as drastically better, having something a little suboptimal doesn't hurt you as much. But what I will say is I know a lot of people will find this frustrating because you do have to learn how to carry from your individual role. You've got to understand that you need to flex pick, not across roles, but inside them in order to beat whatever the enemy's sending at you. And sometimes you might just be on the best pick and you just got to play better. I know a lot of people feel like they want to know the map and game mode they're going to be playing on before they select their hero. So maybe you like to play Soldier 76 on Numbani, and you get on Nepal, maybe you go to Lucio just to boot people off. But the problem is, selecting heroes that way was actually a pretty big shortcut to SR. It allows you to only pick things you're already decent at, rather than requiring you to learn more out of the roles you're queuing for, which is the new system. That's why it's harder, right? Because you're queuing for support, well, you might not get Sanctum. Maybe it's a Mercy map. Maybe it's an Ana map. You don't know, right? And although that might feel bad in the short term, it's going to make the SR way more accurate, and you will have to learn your role in a more complete way, which I think just increases the game quality to a severe degree. Another major downside to the role lock system thus far is that on the PTR at least, and Jeff did admit this was going to be the case, so they are aware of it, but the MMR is just completely broken. What they've done is sort of a soft reset, like they do to new accounts. So not only could you get placed very high after your 5 placement matches, but multiple matches after that, there's hundreds of SR win or lose, which I think is really, really bad. It will utterly break the game if it comes out to live like this. I'm really hoping they get it sorted out, because if they don't, this will be all anybody's talking about, because you'll have bronze players in plat for the first time, gold's getting into GM games, it's gonna be all over the place. But it's our hope anyway that they get the tweaking on it right, and also when there's a bigger population playing it in the Role Queue beta coming out in a few weeks, that'll help shore up the system. And the last point I want to make is that I hope the community is ready with this. There is a chance that this increases toxicity, not decrease it, because there's going to be a lot of frustration and growing pains with the friction of needing to learn more heroes in a role than you're used to, as well as the game being harder and everything. And my hope is that in this format, because you know you can't swap to take someone else's role and all that, we all instead focus more on ourselves rather than blaming everybody else a little bit more than we normally do. And if that's the case, then it'll be fine. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is we've often called ranked easy mode for the past few years. And while this is the hard mode that we've asked for, the play actual Overwatch mode, it's great for anyone taking the game seriously, but it might be a little bit too much who preferred the more casual random elements of the old system. I forgot to mention this as well. I know many people are going to be concerned about role lock going into quick play, but I think, to be honest, this is just going to increase the stock of quick play and make it far better of a mode. So much so that I don't think most people are going to even go back to quick play classic. It might be so bad that they might just close that playlist entirely, or the queue times might be long, because turns out Overwatch in general is just better in 2-2-2. You can wait your turn in line to get DPS, or you can get faster queues by going for tank and healer, and let's face it, they're all pretty fun to play. It's just that tank and heals often aren't fun when you don't have one of the other roles. If you have 4 damage and it's like, well, do I play tank or heals? In this situation, I mean, neither looks really great. A lot of the damage picks are pretty self-sufficient and just go off and play deathmatch. But now that you know you'll have tanks and heals, even just playing the game casually, I think is better, honestly. Which isn't the knee-jerk reaction I had at the start. I thought, oh, quick play players aren't going to like this, but I think you will, honestly, if you just try it. Now you can actually learn heroes in quick play the actual game, and I think it's more fun, honestly. Well, guys, that's everything for my role lock review. Have you been playing it on the PTR? If so, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're excited about role queue coming in to save Overwatch, please be sure to leave the video a like. It really helps us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link in the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news updates and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.